Everyone's here, and now is the time for our panel discussion. So, basically, we have on the panel people who have been part of the game development um, for this game, and they have served as associates, and their feedback and input has been super useful for us to develop this game. And as you also saw, all the insights they bring in the through the game and the game demo have been super valuable. So thank you all for being here today. I'm just gonna briefly introduce our panel for today, if that's fine. Um, so we start. Sorry, just one sec. All right, so on the panel today, we have Andrea. Andrea Wallace. She, her is an associate professor of law and technology at the University of Exeter and the co-director of the AHRC-funded GLAMI Lab in partnership with the Engelberg Center on Innovation Law and Policy at NYU Law School. Andrea works across multiple disciplines, including intellectual property law, art and cultural heritage law, digital humanities, visual studies, and museum studies. Her research focuses on emerging issues related to digital technologies, intellectual property, and art and cultural heritage management. We also have Jill To, who is a Chinese Singaporean currently based in Amsterdam. She is co-founder of the Racism and Technology Center, a nonprofit based in the Netherlands. She also is a PhD researcher at the University of Amsterdam, where her work focuses on the intersections of labor, technology, and power under racial capitalism. We have Femke. Femke, she develops projects at the intersection of publishing, transfeminism, and free software. In various constellations, Femke works on reimagining computational practices to disinvest from technological monoculture and the regime of the cloud. With Miriam Aurag, Seda Goses, Helen Pritchard, and Hara Roca, Femke runs the Institute for Technology in the Public Interest, TTP, a trans practice activist research gathering of artists, engineers, theorists, and activists. In Ecologies of Dissemination, she develops together with Eva Weinmar feminist and decolonial approaches to open access. Femke also supports artistic research at Marian in Maastricht and contributes to Nubo, which is a cooperative which provides locally hosted open source digital services. We have Helen. Helen is an artist designer, geographer, activist, and queer love theorist. They organize with the Institute for Technology in the Public Interest, TTP, and regenerative energy communities, working at the intersection of trans feminist, radical kinship, humus punk, digital infra, queer energy practice, and agroecology to uphold a politics of queer survival and practice in queering damage. They're a practitioner of queering damage, co-editor of the manual Infrastructural Interactions, Survival, Resistance, and Radical Care from 2022, and Plants by Numbers, Art, Computation, and Queer Feminist Technoscience. Helen is professor and head of research at IXDM, Basel Academy of Art and Design, FHNW, and co-editor of the Future Media series for Goldsmiths Press. And lastly, we have Siddharth, lastly but not leastly, Siddharth Peter D'Souza is an affiliated researcher at the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology, and Society, and he is incoming as an assistant professor at the Center for Interdisciplinary Methods, University of Warwick from January 2025. His work explores how data is governed globally in contested and plural settings. He has recently published a monograph titled Designing Indicators for a Plural Legal World, which discusses how rule of law indicators need to be reimagined in contexts and countries in the global majority. Siddharth is also the founder of Justice Adda, a law and design social venture which seeks to build legal literacy and awareness in India. So, quite a distinguished panel we have here today. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks so much for your time and all your energy with this project. Uh, I thought this would be a good time for us to come together and discuss and reflect everything which has gone with this game in the past few months, but also just your experiences of playing the game today. So I think that that would be just my first question. What was your experience like for playing the game? And others who are in the audiences who were also watching or playing the game, please feel to pitch in as well at any time if you want to. Uh, what was your experience? What was it like to play Bewitching Technologies in its final form? Yeah, I'll just stop screen sharing so everyone can see each other. All right. Thank you for alerting me to that. All right, hope that's better. So, your experiences of playing the game.
So I'll jump in as mediator. I mean, I think those of us who do kind of organizing or teaching or these sorts of roles, um, it's always a bit of like a strange position to be in when you're trying to get people, to talk and kind of reflect. There's so much in these cards, right? There's so much. Uh, and I think that space for reflection is really important when we're thinking about how we kind of create the space for people to come together to think about these games and the questions that are being posed, um, which can feel just a kind of a bit funky, right? When you're the person who's like sort of in trying to get people to like speak up or whatever. And I think that that is an important feeling to sit with, right? And to let kind of be part of this space, for everyone as they think through these things. But there's also so much in each card. And I think that, the mechanics of the game itself really lends itself to different entry points for different players, whether that's looking at the very literal images and the specifics and thinking about what they symbolize, or even zooming out and going straight to like the full reading, depending on kind of where you're coming from. And so I thought that that also might be something that, players might want to reflect on themselves as to like kind of how they entered and even what their backgrounds are or what connection they have to concepts of oracles and magic and divination in the process.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea, for sharing that. Fascinating stuff. Siddharth, yes.
Yeah. Firstly, congratulations, Dylan. I think it's fantastic, and you've managed to pull it together over several months, and it really looks very very impressive, but also inviting. I think to play and having had a chance, I think, to be part of it in different moments. I think seeing the final product is really cool. So congrats on that. For me. For me, I think, and I've told you this before, but I think every time I play the game, I think I think there are different. It's been a different experience. I can't say each experience has been the same. I think there are parts of the game that definitely I think are provocative. I think it forces you to reflect. It puts you in situations that I think both in an academic setting but also outside you wouldn't typically be able to cultivate such a conversation unless you already had an environment to do so. So I think it allows for like very quickly to have quite deep conversations with people. And I think in doing so, sometimes it's also uncomfortable and doesn't make it easy or oftentimes to share. And I think I don't mean uncomfortable in a difficult way, but I mean uncomfortable in a good sense that you are forced to sometimes step outside a comfort zone. So I think in that sense, I think that's something that I have definitely seen. I think I think what and I think Andrea said this well. I think it's also being like a game. The person who has to moderate is an interesting role because you have to also take along people who have such different experiences and expertise. And I think Andrea, you managed to pull us all together. So thanks for that. But I think it was really nice to play it today, and it's been unique. I think every time I've played it before.
Thanks for that.
I was reflecting a little bit on how we moved from the first versions of the game prototype that you had, which was the news image photograph cards, to these illustrations, and also with the story world, and actually, if I think about the kind of experience of playing with the photo cards to the experience of playing now, I think it's like really like transformed in a way, like the worlds in which we might imagine, or even where we place ourselves currently, because the these kind of illustrations, they have like the traces of these media images that you used in the initial set, but they're not perhaps as instantly recognizable. So they also have this kind of like uncanny relationship, or recognition that we might have, but we're not kind of like immediately placed into the London Stock Exchange, or to that news story that we read. And I think that like that also, just as like an archive of like a kind of archival document in a way of the current state of like legal computational questions that you actually have illustrated is super interesting. So like there's one thing of like playing the game with them, but also the moment, like this historical moment that's also kind of like depicted in these cards, I think is super interesting. So I really enjoyed playing with the illustrations. I think it brought a lot to it. And the other thing I was reflecting on a bit today is the license, which I really enjoyed this new edition of the license, and it being so explicit. And it did make me wonder whether there like needs to be an additional part of the game guidelines, which is, because I guess in the license it's really like it shouldn't be taken up by like big tech companies who are participating and fueling and profiting from like genocidal acts, or the genocide currently happening in Palestine. But maybe, in terms of a kind of like what we could do as players would also perhaps be to think about how using Zoom or using Google for the game itself is actually also contributing to that. And so perhaps some groups might really need to use Zoom because that's like what's in use and for questions of access. But maybe there is a kind of mutual aid part of this game, which is like a set of like resources that helps the groups who are playing to also disinvest from these technologies.
Yeah, thanks, Helen, for raising all of that. Uh, just for everyone who's in the call now, or everyone watching this, I want to contextualize what Helen was talking about the first point you made, Helen, about the press images and the cards earlier. So the current card illustrations are based on actually an older deck, which we had made from various copyrighted images, so couldn't really share publicly. But they were mostly press images of various sorts. And so each concept in the deck uh, referred to a press image. And I'll be adding some of those images, actually all of those images to the Discord to kind of as a reference, just so people can have a look if they want to and maybe expand or think through their interpretations and also see how the cards have evolved in the production process. So yeah, definitely that there is something there. Um, Two other things I think I'm kind of being drawn to in this discussion. One was first, both Andrea and Siddharth kind of mentioned, and even Helen, like you guys talked a bit about like the discomfort of playing the game. Andrea was talking about the silence which faces you when you're like in a group, and Siddharth was talking about also, yeah, just discomfort. And there's a comment here from Naomi saying how the game manages to be unsettling. So I think I'm kind of like curious to hear more from everyone who was there in the game today, a bit more about the kind of discomforts you felt, especially also, playing a demo game, I guess, but like playing while you're being watched, but also playing and not maybe not really knowing what's happening, because I think that's something which has always been kind of the challenge in developing the game. Uh, and since the early months that we didn't quite know how to strike the balance between uh, giving players enough information, but also like keeping some of those moments of discomfort and unsettling. And I think that was kind of like that has been kind of tricky. So I'm curious to hear a bit more on that. The other point which Helen raised, I want to come back to that because I think there's so much to unpack there in terms of what kind of infrastructures we have been using, including having this on Zoom, including using things like Discord, YouTube for tutorial videos and stuff like that. Even in the production, we could not avoid using some infrastructures which were obviously ethically very suspect. So I think it's a deep cutting question, and I think something which has become really apparent to me as we went more into the development and production process, and like that tension was always there, like this other sort of tension between politics, ethics versus practicality and accessibility. And yeah, I mean, I'm curious how you guys have seen these tensions manifest over the past few months, but also, as we went through development, but also because we have had some of these conversations before, right? And like we tried some things and some things worked, some things didn't work. So I'm kind of curious how you see that now, especially now, we are here with the game. Yeah. Xenia has her hand up. Yeah, Xenia.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you again. And as a person who, like, I experienced this twice with the leaders, I would say, curators, and I also played a couple of times by my own and with my colleagues. And actually, it's quite interesting how, depending on the leader, how the leader like guide you, how like he or she frame the questions, they like narrate. If I'm not mistaken, we had the same character last time, so it was like the same character, the same like kind of the same questions. Like you can relate to the questions, but the outcome is very different because you have different people in the group and you have different leaders, and you really I don't know, like for me today, it was really cool because you can reflect and compare to very different experience in the same game, and how like our like knowledge production is really like very collective, because you immediately reflect what other people suggest, how they frame the question, how they think about their cards. So yeah, I think like it was a really great and fascinating experience, and I really want. I told you before, and I really want this in a physical one. I think it will be even. It will be different. This like physical interaction, but I'm loving it. And like today, and the last point is that every time you see like your game is very, very thoughtful and deliberate, because with every question and like with every experience, I noticed like very particular details that contribute to your experience. Like, for example, today was the first time when I see the time pattern, like past, present, and future. And I really appreciate that you didn't do it like in a linear manner, but rather like in a circle. So like you really can see like the connection. You can see like how future can go to the past, and like instead of this linear time, like temporal framing, you give another dimension to like think and reflect it. So really great, and like very like every experience is very unique, because of your very, I don't know, like good job that you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Xenia. That's very generous. I also want to say, if anyone from the audiences have questions for the panel, and so on, please feel free to use a mic and ask them, or drop them in the chat. And quickly to read one of the comments which Naomi has put in the chat. I was so impressed by how the game manages to be actually thought-provoking and unsettling. Often games that attempt this either fall flat by being too obvious as to the intended outcome, or so broad that it leaves players swimming. This game strikes the balance perfectly and truly facilitates in having deeper conversations. Incredibly impressed, and congratulations to all and everything involved in pulling this together. Thanks, Naomi. That's very sweet, and generous as well. Yeah, so the floor is open for audience questions. And maybe as we wait for them, yeah, we'll also want to reflect on some of the themes which have come up so far, which is quite a lot.
I mean, I have a question that I think people would be more broadly interested in as well. And that is sort of like how you came to these words and these images, and kind of how I think each card has so much in it, right? Like even the consumption card, and the way that, the description is written, and how we experience the image and the text together, like each card is so rich. So having, I think, some insight about, all of that and what that was like for you, but also the team, would be great.
All right, thanks, Andrea. We have Jill, and then we have Femke.
Yeah, hello and congratulations, Dylan and a team. I'm so excited to be here. Sorry I was a bit late, but I'm just so it's been so nice to sort of listen to all of you and to sort of see this game develop. It's been such an amazing experience, especially for someone who I'm not usually a game player, and I feel like this game has sort of converted me into sort of being open, because I think this game I think there are very few games that speak to me in a way. And I think echoing probably I think what Andrea said earlier was sort of the entry point into it was yeah, there's so many different entry points to it that I think through the process of playing this game, I realized that I could also draw in, my respective culture and my understanding of certain things that sometimes other games forecloses that. So that was sort of a very nice way to sort of relate to the game. And that's why I feel like in that sense, I feel seen by this game. And I hope other people could also sort of, yeah, could sort of see themselves being brought into it. And so thank you very much for it. And it's just so beautiful to sort of see sort of the way the sort of imagery and the words sort of shift according to time. And I think in this last version that I was looking at sort of and the constant process I think that was being done in how do you translate these really big topics into a particular game format that doesn't underestimate or overestimate the existing knowledge and understanding of the players. And I think that came across very well because I think that was a very hard one to strike because you're talking about particular vernaculars in technology or in law, big topics that have its own set of terminologies. And I think that sort of came across well for everyone to be able to to participate in it, while at the same time questioning our own set of understandings of coming into this game. So I thought that was a really great job. And I think the tensions that you mentioned, this is separate to another topic, the tensions that emerge about, engaging with these infrastructures that we seek to dismantle, that seek to recreate. I think this is also very similar, of course, in sort of the organizing context all the time, right? Like, how do we mobilize through these existing platforms? And I think what's interesting is that in this current juncture, I think the power of tech and these platforms and these infrastructures are felt very much by many, not just organizers, but also regular people that are experiencing shadow banning, censorship when it comes to Palestine, or just reposting and witnessing this ongoing multiple genocides in Sudan, Congo, Palestine, and also police brutality in the imperial core. So I feel like this game is also emerging in a very particular context that is interesting because I think there's a broader consciousness about the effects of relying on these technologies and these infrastructures. So I think that it's quite interesting to sort of see the tension that we've been dealing with while creating this game in relation to also sort of this public consciousness about oppressive infrastructures. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Femke?
Yes. Thank you so much. I think this tension, like this contrast between the deceivingly simple setup of the game and then the sort of staggering complexity of the issues is really, can't say helpful. Like, works really well, I think. And having played it a few times in different iterations of the game, but today I was really a bit speechless to try and think about how those cards speak to um, what's happening around us. And so I wanted to ask you a question, which is maybe a bit hard at the end. Like, now you're rounding this process and we're actually celebrating a finishing. But how are you thinking about what's going to happen next? I mean, again, also looking at the license and its invitation to mutate and be taken on by different people, or do you have any plans, any ideas of how to, how to continue thinking with this material?
Yeah. Big questions. I think I'll try to address some of the questions which have come up in order. First was what is Andrea's question, right? About what was the process like to come up with the cards and so on, and how did it become so? Yeah, I'm actually kind of sad that the people from the production team could not all be here today, because I think there was so much to unpack there too, and our experiences of really collaborating and working so closely was extremely generative, and it was like a real great production experience with this game. and just this kind of like back and forth collaboration, especially since none of us had ever worked together before. So that was kind of intimidating at the beginning, but given that, I'm like really glad how well it turned out, and how well this, just the vibes kind of matched. Um, for the cards themselves, as I was saying before, it was this deck which we have currently, Bewitching Technologies, is based on an earlier uh, deck called speculative machine learning, which I was actually working on in 2020, right in the middle of the lockdown. Uh, and that was, I think, the first time Helen and Femke probably also saw the deck, the old deck. And I had just presented it at a conference on computing, critical computing, and we were trying to just think through stuff, but really the idea was to disrupt your normal conference and workshop formats and how they go, and to kind of begin conversations on real terms, right? Which we don't happen doesn't always happen in conferences. Like we tend to lose the forest for the trees and so on. Um, so the idea for the deck itself was based in a proposal. Nupur Raval, who's now an assistant professor at the University of California, Irvine. No, I think she's at UCLA now. Yeah, and she and I had come up with this idea that we want to talk about colonization, and Nupur would provide some context for colonization in the context of computing, and I was supposed to do this card thing. And I think conversations with Nupur were really helpful in kind of thinking about this theme of how colonialism acts in computational practices, and as well as given my own background of legal training. Of course, like it's always kind of there in the back of my mind, law, and so that was like thematically, that's what I was thinking, and and then of course, like the challenge was, how do you take these big ideas and come up with these very pointed cards or images, um, and distill them into something which can be a hook to start a conversation. And for that, I really relied on the Coleman Rider-Waite tarot deck. So each card is actually my interpretation of the Coleman Rider-Waite tarot. At least in the earlier deck, it was my interpretation of the Coleman Rider-Waite tarot in the context of computing, colonization, and legal practices. And then thankfully this year we finally got an opportunity to really render the cards in a way which can be publicly shared and played. And Yarli Allison, who was an amazing artist, she was very generous in joining us, and she then interpreted the old press images we had for the cards into these new cards. And she also joined us for some of the development workshops, as you saw. And yeah, I mean, I think her interpretations are so amazing. Like, I think they really keep the depth of each of those moments, like historical moments, which Helen was referring to in the press images, but at the same time also make it a bit more open to projecting different contexts upon. So I think that is so key to developing a deck like this. Yeah, so I mean, big thanks to Yali. I think the deck is as it stands right now is really her. Like without our conversations over the summer, yeah, it would not be here, right? Like how it is. And of course, also big thanks to Mehmetek and Jenny Davis, who did all the website development and animation and graphic design, which took a lot as well. And I have bugged them a lot over these past months. So, they have been amazing. So I just want to give a shout out to all of them. Uh, Regarding the question of the license, uh, I think I have Andrea to thank a bit for this, and also actually Femke, because I think Femke, you had already brought up these tensions right in the beginning in the development workshops earlier when in May, back when we were having these discussions around what counts as an ethical practice of production, right? And what are we doing, and how can we say we have a decolonizing approach or etc. when we are using those infrastructures which are implicated in the worst forms of oppression and violence. And I think the license, I thought that was a very important conversation that really stayed with me. And I really, I think over the last few months, I've really kind of been coming back to it. And in a way, the license um was an attempt to keep that conversation alive so that it doesn't like get hidden behind, the game. But the license in a way allows us to see that tension because yes, we say it's anti-colonial, like users committed to colonial capitalist fascist principles don't use it. But then what happens when we're accessing this through uh, a browser, through Chrome, through Google Chrome, and or working through Zoom and so on. So I think these are important discussions to have, and the license is a modification of actually another license, which is called the anti-capitalist license, or which Andrea had sent it to me. And she had also, I think, Femke, you had also shared some of your work around developing different kinds of copyright licenses, which was really, really interesting as thinking of licenses as a political statement, I think. And that was really helpful. So I don't know, like I have to say, I don't have an answer for this. It's not perfect. I think there are many tensions which are still unresolved in the game, in how we use it and so on. And I mean, I think it's almost aspirational to say that, yes, we don't want it. I mean, we have this positioning of anti-colonial, decolonial, queer feminist, anti-fascist kind of positioning, but what does it really mean in the real world, right? Like, because even a license like that, how does it get interpreted legally? We don't really know, but at least it creates that opening to, I don't know, object or have those contested conversations. So yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it at. Like, I mean, where the future goes, I think the next steps will be having more of these conversations and maybe seeing what comes out of it. Yeah, Femke's free fermentation license. Thanks for adding that in the chat, Andrea. The free fermentation license at constant and also the ACAP license. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Andrea. Uh, Andrea, did you also have a question before? I think your hand was raised. Thanks, Clarice. Great to have you here. What do you all think? What do you think? Where do you think we are going next? What happens? How do you see this game being used? Or where do you see it? How do you plan to use it? And I love to hear more. Femke.
Sorry, so many buttons. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I'm really excited about thinking how to organize a session with it, because the times that we've played it really in your hands. Also because it was still like the first times we came across it, it was always like, I mean, there was still a lot of ways you had to perform around it to make it work. And now to see it in a form that actually would allow it to circulate elsewhere with other types of game masters and new participants that are in very different environments. I'm really excited to try that out and see what happens. But also that could produce changes or shifts in the game. And I was just trying to imagine what the infrastructure for coming back with those changes to the game or to you, or yeah, how to think about this. But no clear answer yet. But very excited about imagining different environments to take this into.
Yeah, thanks, Famke. And I just want to say to you and to anyone watching this, I'm really interested in having these conversations and how things might change and how we can modify the game as well, maybe in future iterations and so on. So please do reach out to me if you have ideas or thoughts. I also see Siddharth had to leave, so thanks, Siddharth, and some other folks as well. Jill, your turn.
Yeah, so I think similarly to Femke, it's just to sort of see how other people as outside of sort of the more critical tech bubble would sort of react and respond to the game. I think we're in a, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very particular moment. Um, Especially around like propulsion and organizing, especially organizing spaces where you sort of see the need to sort of come together and collectively do stuff beyond just organizing. So forms of collective care, of communing, coming out of isolation and find community. And I'm actually really excited to sort of use this as a game to sort of bring people together in sort of the two spaces that I'm in. So one more at the university, but also amongst more like cultural workers, because I think, for example, topics on AI is such a big thing, but they sort of see it in a very particular perspective. So I'm sort of excited to see the game as something that brings people together in sort of figuring out what does technology and infrastructures mean. Because I think on the whole, people are sort of really seeing how ongoing genocides relate to each other, right? Struggles over land, over resources. These things are interconnected. So I think with sort of that consciousness in mind already coming in with this game that does this work of interconnecting on a very material level, I think that would be exciting to sort of see how people respond and understand to something like technology that can sometimes be very invisibilized in the more mainstream perspective. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also reminded of Xenia's comment from earlier when she said like having a physical deck would be like quite cool, and that's actually an idea which I've had for a while now. And Andrea also mentioned in expansion packs here. So yeah, of course, like the tarot Rider-Waite tarot is Coleman Rider-Waite is 78 cards. What we have is only 22 so far. So I mean, yeah, there's many possibilities. I mean, and making it physical also, I think, brings a different vibe to an organizing kind of space. So that is something I'm curious about exploring more in the coming time. Yeah, sure. Thanks. All right. I'm just looking at the time. So we are quite close to time now. Um, if anyone has any last words, uh, maybe on the game, your experience, anything you want to share. So if not, I think a lot has been shared already. Yeah, just want to say a big thank you to everyone for being here for not just today, but also over the past few months and years. And just being around, not just for making the game, but also as someone to exchange ideas with and to bounce ideas off of, to find that community and support, especially in the tough times we live in. Because I think the game is really a manifestation, like Jill was saying, of the current moment and where we are coming from, like in the post-apocalypse, right? And yeah, and living in the post-apocalypse is not really tenable without all your support and love and community. I also want to thank all the non-human land spirits which have helped me interpret the cards, render them, and through all the different geographies I've been through in the last 4 or 5 years. Um, and yeah, thanks. Big love.
Thank you. Thank you.
Big love to you too.
Thank you, everyone. Let's keep in touch and keep talking, and hopefully we'll have more to unwrap. And if you do play the game, please do share your experiences through the review form or directly through me to me. Do share it in your workplaces with colleagues, friends, family, etc. Love to see love to know how the game works for you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.